Now I want to go to a football game. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our USC Viterbi Innovation Partners Salon Series. I'm Azita Martin, GM of Artificial Intelligence for the retail industry at NVIDIA, and I'm also an alumna of both Viterbi and Marshall School of Business. For those of you who may not be familiar with Viterbi Innovation Partners, or as we call it, VIP. The vision that we have is community, connections, and collaboration. And what we're doing is to build an engaged community of Bay Area Viterbi alumni, as well as prospective parents, existing parents, and thought leaders through intellectual enrichment, mentorship for our students, helping them find internship and full-time jobs, networking among each other, and philanthropy, obviously. And so before we begin our panel today, I wanted to just thank those of you that responded to a recent survey that we sent over, asking for ideas about topics for our future salon series and recommendations for speakers, whether you are a great speaker and would like to talk about a topic that you think is of interest to other members of our Viterbi community here in the Bay Area. So thank you for those suggestions. We definitely will get in touch with you. We're always looking for great ideas, for great speakers. And so that would be one of our next steps after this event to reach out to those of you who responded. So with that, I'd like to introduce two of our distinguished faculties from Viterbi and Annenberg. So first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Salman Avestimar. Dr. Avestimar is an inaugural director of the USC Amazon Center for Secure and Trusted Machine Learning. He's also Dean's Professor of Electrical and Computer Science at Viterbi, as well as the director of our Information Theory and Machine Learning Research Lab. He has won countless awards and appointments for his research areas, which include information theory, machine learning, distributed computing, and secure and private learning and computing, which is a big topic that we're going to talk about today. And in particular, He's been the recipient of the Picasso Award from President Obama and the Macy Research and Teaching Award from IEEE, Information Theory Society, which is the highest honor in IT society to researchers under the age of 40. And he has led many large-scale projects sponsored by government agencies such as DARPA and NSF, as well as projects that are industry related. And his research lab is also maintaining an open source research library for federated learning, which I'm going to have Salman actually explain what that is, because it's related to some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. And this open source research library is actually ranked in top 3 GitHub repositories for federated learning. And by the way, Salman, I feel so unaccomplished after reading all your incredible accomplishment under the age of 40. So wonderful to have you on this panel. Next, I'd like to introduce Emilio Ferrara. Dr. Ferrara is Associate Professor of Communication and Computer Science, as well as Associate Director of Applied Data Science Program and Research Team Leader at the USC Information Services Institute, and the Principal Investigator at the USC ISI Machine Intelligence and Data Science Group. His research interest includes using AI for modeling and predicting human behavior and technosocial systems. And Dr. Ferrara has published over 150 articles on social networks, machine learning, and network science, and has appeared in, his publications have appeared in the National Academy of Sciences, and has been featured in a lot of major news outlets. Dr. Ferrara was named in 2015 the IBM Watson Big Data Influencer and received the 2016 DARPA Young Faculty Award, the 2016 Complex Systems Society Junior Scientific Award, and in 2018 he received the DARPA Director's Fellowship, and the in 2019 the Viterbi Junior Faculty Research Award. So with that, I'd like to just welcome our 2 faculties and give you a little bit of a idea about what we're going to be talking about today. So as you saw in the invitation, the topic that we've picked is, can AI be trusted? And we obviously hear a lot about AI and machine learning being used by industries. We also see it impacting our lives, and it touches many areas. What we read on social media, what we see on e-commerce, what we see in the news. And even though often we get this targeted information that can create great discussion, sometimes we also seem to be kind of sitting in our echo chamber and listening and hearing only to the stuff that is relevant to us. And we see that a lot in the social media sites and so forth. So what we wanted to talk about is, how can we ensure that AI and the technologies that it's driving can be trusted? And as part of that, we want to talk about the USC Amazon Center for Secure and Trusted Machine Learning, which was inaugurated just very recently. And was created for this purpose, to develop new approaches to machine learning privacy and security. And so we're going to have Professor Avestimar and Ferrara help us understand what is the purpose of the USC Amazon Center. Why did Amazon select USC as the partner? And really understand also areas of collaboration that are going on between Viterbi and Annenberg. And for those of you who might be out of school for a while, I want to remind everyone that USC Annenberg is the #1 communication school in the United States. And Viterbi is one of the leading universities in federated learning, which I'm going to have Salman explain in more detail. So Salman and Emilio, welcome. I can't call you with your last names anymore now that we're doing the panel. So welcome, really excited to have you both on this panel. So Salman, maybe I start with you. Can you help us understand what is the purpose of the USC Amazon Center?
Of course. So first, thanks much, Azita, for the very generous introduction. Hi, everybody. It's great pleasure to be here. I'm noticing is well over 100 people there. So it's an honor, pleasure to see the successful alumni from USC, in particular Viterbi. So you asked many questions, Azita, leading to the center, but I think everybody in the audience is well aware of AI and machine learning being in our daily lives. Like, even the kids are using AI, asking questions with Alexa, Siri, these devices. So, it's no more the future. Is currently we are using it, we are living it, and something becoming like a household item that we are all interacting with. There should be a huge level of trust in using it. Especially they're coming to every room in our house, to our bedrooms. We are using them for important decisions, and we are going to rely much more on them in the future. So this issue of security, privacy, and trustworthiness in machine learning, everybody is well aware of it. The question is, what are we doing, and what are the targeted efforts to try to understand them at a deeper level? And that's where the center has been created. Okay, so this is one of the first centers sponsored by Amazon being a big player in the cloud domain, in the machine learning domain, that generously providing the support to enable exciting research at a great university, USC. Okay, so the purpose has really been to think about this problem at a deeper level, and I would also say at a broader level. And that's something that perhaps at one university, at one industry, you cannot accomplish it. But at universities is much better to be accomplished because, as you mentioned, there are a variety of departments, all the way from electrical engineering, computer science, going to communications, going to applications. For example, the purpose of secure machine learning in medical domain is another important area. And being at a university is like the prime spot that you can think about all these problems and how this ecosystem will work together. Now, telling you a little bit more on how would this center operate, like what does it mean? What does the USC Amazon Center would mean before we get into maybe discussions on the research themes, etc. So this is going to be a 5-year research center that, it's going to operate by, of course, some, advisory boards from USC side, advisory boards from Amazon side to come up with vision of which direction to go. But essentially, the way it will enable research is via sponsoring research by faculty and students at USC. So, for example, we had recently the first call for proposals for the center a couple of months ago, and we are going to announce the first set of 5 research projects that will be chosen in the first year in a couple of weeks. And the process is, faculty will write their ideas, will write a proposal the same way as they are writing proposals to funding agencies. And through the selection process, we pick the ones that are well aligned with the goal of trustworthy machine learning and the goals of the center. So once they are funded, they're going to be part of the center, doing the research and, trying to think about the problems and making an impact in this domain. That's where not only we enable the research, having Amazon on the side, hopefully will also enable broader impact, making this to products that will be used or making this to, whatever they see fit. So that's one area. The other area is, if you think about it, USC or in general university, like the main asset of it is the talent that we have, and the talent is the students. So another purpose of the center is to recognize our students who are working in the machine learning domain, in particular PhD students. So the center is going to have several PhD fellowships per year for PhD students who are in their second to fourth year. They will be called Amazon ML Fellows. And hopefully that recognition not only enables their independent research, but later, it can help them to get to better positions.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Finally, the third part is having symposium and workshop on this topic. So for example, from the audience, if they are interested to know and follow the research that is done in the center, we are going to have the first research symposium sometime in the fall. And I think in the fall, it will be virtual or a mix of virtual and physical. So we can extend the invitation. This is going to be available to public, whoever wants to listen to the talks on the projects, and they will know what is the state of the art on these problems. So that has been really the goal of creating the center.
That's wonderful. I think what I heard and really gets me excited is it goes across multiple industries, right? It totally applies to healthcare. It applies to the consumer side, to the social media and journalism side. So that's very, very exciting. So maybe one more question for Salman before I reach out to Emilia. Why did Amazon choose USC? They're up in Seattle. Why did they choose USC for this investment?
Maybe the short answer is we are great. But the long answer is maybe a couple of things. These decisions, again, I'm not aware, I don't know exact details of what leads to their decision, but there are a couple of things that maybe I can speculate, and I have seen Amazon being excited on that. One of them being LA by itself and USC, a big university in LA. So you can think about that's a very nice ecosystem to study this trustworthy aspect of AI in a big cosmopolitan area. Okay, so that I think, is a very good component. As we will talk later, Emilio and I are going to talk about other aspects of trustworthy machine learning to get it to trustworthy journalism, etc. These are the problems that in LA are, you can really study them and see them in daily life. Another part is, these issues of secure and privacy machine learning has created a lot of excitement on a new area called federated learning that we will talk later. And you highlighted on that, on federated learning, we are one of the leading universities. The open source library and benchmark that we have is used across the world. So that shows not only we are doing great research, but there is an eye on making an impact and having algorithmic developments that can be used more broadly. Third part is this combination of USC being great in engineering, Viterbi is excellent, alongside having Annenberg, which is the communication, and the Keck School, which is where a lot of applications would come. So having this combination of three great areas on engineering, communications, and journalism, and medical school, I think that's a great thing to have. So the question is, why shouldn't they choose USC?
Absolutely. And actually, NVIDIA, USC is one of the top 5 North America schools, including Canada, that we hire our engineers from. So wonderful. So with that, let me get to Emilio. Emilio, maybe can you explain this federated learning that we keep talking about? And not everybody is an expert in AI. Can you maybe explain what federated learning is and give us a couple of examples, maybe around journalism or healthcare, where federated learning is a positive approach to building great algorithms?
Certainly. So first of all, let me echo Salman's feeling during the introduction. I am honored to be here today with, talking to a great audience of amazing alumni of our school and our university. I was going to give a very, very brief thought on some of the ideas that we shared that leads into the federated learning focus. So in general, the effort that we are currently carrying out at large at USC is in some sense that to create an umbrella system, of which USC and the USC Amazon Center are one example, hopefully the first of many in the future, where there are partnerships between academia and industry to tackle really practical, really impactful problems that are at the forefront in terms of impact on society. We're going to discuss about some of these applications later, so without further spoilers, I'm going to get into why this is important right now and where the federated learning and trust and secure computing applies. I was following the Q&A question, and there was already a great the Q&A panel, and there is already a great question from Fred Cohen that said, trust and secure the AI, trusted for what and how much, right? How far do we go? These are exactly the sort of fundamental research questions that can be answered in the context of these partnerships, right? These are questions that we have to tackle first, in a research mindset where we can understand the implications. So if we think about healthcare, for example, maybe we could trust the AI machine learning models to help our doctors make better decisions or more informed decisions, but we don't trust them enough to replace our doctors right now. So these are very fundamental questions today of how far you can go given the technologies that we have at our disposal, and moving forward, how do you build more complex, more reliable technologies? There is also another effort in this context, which is within the secure and trust computing and AI. How do you contextualize the issues related to fairness and bias and ethics of machine learning? In the area of AI, and in partnership with also these external entities. When it comes to federated computing, I'm going to give you a very practical example of how this works, and then how we use something like this in the context of a fundamental research project in health, in the space of healthcare. So everyone probably in this audience knows the basic idea of federated computing, that you have a federation of a system federation where there is a centralized authority that probes information from these systems that are satellite systems, and you can run machine learning or on these satellite systems without the need to share data or to send data to this centralized authority. This has in healthcare, of course, has provided sort of a framework for a dramatic change in mindset, because if the information doesn't need to leave a particular device, such as like a mobile phone or a sensor like a Fitbit or something like that, that is, for example, an hospital can be instrumented with sensors, or individuals can be equipped with these kind of devices to measure their well-being and so on, or if a particular hospital system is a repository of digital health information about patients and so on. All these data has to follow, and the systems that contain this data have to follow strict regulation in regard to HIPAA restrictions, so limitations on the data access, in limitations about private information, PII, and personal and identifiable information, and so on. Federated learning provides that kind of framework where we can enable local computation and learning on data that doesn't need to leave a given device. And as a practical application of the kind of things that the kind of research and the kind of applications that federated learning enables, a few years ago here at USC, in a collaboration between the Computer Science Department, the ECE Department, and the Information Sciences Institute, we actually ran the largest study in a live environment in the USC hospital, in which we collected data and surveys as well as real-time responses from an app that we created on a population of over 350 hospital workers, nurses, staff, administrators, lab technicians, and so on, who to track their well-being on the workplace. And you can imagine, obviously, that this is an enormous challenge because we equipped the participants with Fitbits, ECG, chest bands to track their heart rate and so on. We instrumented the hospital with position sensors, light, humidity, temperature sensors, and so on. A large amount, and also microphones, so that we could record interactions among the subjects. But this opens up for an enormous amount of challenges because, of course, you don't want to share this data. You don't want to send around this data. This can be very sensitive, very private data. Maybe the microphone could capture a conversation between a patient and a nurse, for example, right? And that should never be sent around and so on. So by adopting a federated learning system in this particular case, we were able to enable on-device application. So actually a mobile phone app that was used as a hub to collect the data from Fitbit, from the sensors, from the audio, and so on, would process all on this little machine that we underestimate the incredible power that it has. It would process all this data, it would run machine learning on the iPhone, and then ship processed data without any trace of personal private information to the federation, to the centralized system, where this was then later aggregated, studied, run into other models that allow us to study the well-being of the participants, how they suffered, for example, from when the pandemic hit, and so on and so forth. So in a nutshell, this is the power of federated learning, and this is the enabler capabilities that federated learning has for secure, private, ethical AI.
All right. So in a nutshell, it's taking data from individuals and aggregating it and trains the algorithms to make the algorithms much more accurate without exposing the privacy information of the individual data that's contributing to it. Is that a good simplification?
I would think that in general, you can think of it as a sort of a decentralized computing system. In our particular application that I described in the healthcare scenario and so on, yes, we actually managed to do exactly what you said. We were able to run these machine learning systems on, let's say, a mobile phone and so on. But federated learning doesn't necessarily only encompass this kind of applications. It's a broader principle framework for decentralized computing.
Got it. Awesome. Salman, any other examples you want to give, maybe around the Alexa Echo that we all have in our home and is like Alexa watching us 24 hours a day and all that?
Of course, but before going there, maybe another way you can see FL is also related to other transition from cloud to edge, meaning that everybody, is talking about from cloud computing getting to edge computing. The counterpart of it in machine learning and AI would be federated learning. Means the current ML ecosystem is get the data, train a gigantic model like GPT-3 over the cloud. There is gonna run into limitations. The federated learning would want to change that and say, do it across the users and don't bring it over the cloud. So maybe that's another angle to view that.
Awesome.
But going back to the examples, I think, household items, whether it's gonna be, Google AI assisted devices, Amazon Alexa devices, these are prime examples. They're collecting a lot of data. At the same time, they provide AI services. Means you interact with them. They're supposed to answer questions from distilling knowledge from the web and answer you, questions. Maybe in the future, they answer more complicated questions. Right now, they can do basic questions, but you can imagine tomorrow, maybe you rely on them to give you suggestions for important decisions. Means based on knowing you just ask a quick question, what camera should I buy? And you want to trust that this is not driven by marketing ads, etc. This is based on coming up with a personalized algorithm for you that tries to find the best decision instead of you reading all the reviews on different cameras, going through the optimizing the price, etc. So you can imagine these questions could easily become more complicated. And in general, coming up with devices or maybe services that can help you with the questions, with decisions, those could be prime examples of federated learning.
Awesome. We got a question that I thought maybe we shouldn't wait till the end. We got it from one of our audiences, Thomas Neal, which is, his question is, what is artificial intelligence? And I want to answer that because I'm in charge of developing AI solutions for retail. And I'm sure, you will give a different answer, Salman and Emilia, you'll give a slightly different answer, but I would look at it as artificial intelligence is an algorithm or a series of algorithms that you train with a lot of data that can provide recommendations and what I call human augmentation, like recommend something to a human being to make a decision, like you said, what camera should I buy? Or it can actually take action. And I'll give you an example of what that take action is. And then thirdly, it could automate something like robotics, right? So I work a lot with the retail industry, and the retail industry loses 1.5% of their revenue to theft. And especially it's happening when people are checking out at self-checkouts and take like a bottle of whiskey and put a Kit Kat underneath it and scan it as Kit Kat, right? And that's huge loss, where today there's algorithms that are getting trained on recognizing, no, this is a bottle of whiskey. The camera is recognizing it's a bottle of whiskey and it doesn't match the SKU that just got scanned, and it shuts down the machine and it sends a text to an associate to come. And then instead of the associate saying, you're trying to steal something, they go, oh, sorry, you know what? Let me reset the machine and let me help you scan it. And that's how retailers are saving millions and millions of dollars. I mean, just for Walmart alone is about $3 billion a year in terms of just, providing recommendations and actions that benefits that. And you can use machine learning for that. You can use, in some cases, deep learning. So I would say, that's a really simple example that touches all of us. So I'm very self-conscious when I'm in self-checkout lanes, because I know there's a camera up there checking me out, because I know who we've sold those things to. So that's one good example. Anything else, maybe Salman or Emilia, that you guys want to talk about? What's your definition, or what do you AI?
I think your short definition was quite good. I mean, is learning from data by a program or a machine. Everything in that sentence is clear except learning, that I don't know what it means. And I don't think anybody knows. Like, what does it mean that we learn? Most of it is finding patterns. That's how we learn, like finding how to, deal with patterns. But there are sometimes in humanity that something new is learned, right? So those are the things that I cannot explain. And maybe machines can do that. That I think where the sophistication would arise. What does learning mean? But the other part is learning from data by program.
That's awesome. All right. So next, maybe I wanted to ask both of you, what is your vision at USC beyond the Amazon Center? So I think there's a whole bunch of stuff going on at the Amazon Center, but both of you are collaborating a lot together, and you've got a pretty great vision in terms of where you want to take all of this. So can I ask one of you to get started about, what that vision is?
Sure, maybe I can go first, Emilio, if you want. So this is also very much related to some of the questions on what does trust mean and how much do we want to trust, etc. And that's where our vision for the future is more of what is going to be the future of trust in our society. And I think that's where more broadly trying to think about that problem and, positioning USC, our group, to provide, good answers, making an impact on that domain, I think would be useful. Just to give an example, previously, trust is driven on personal trust. Like, we trust each other because we come from USC background and we think we have mutual interests. It has evolved to institutional trust, but it's not evolving that, it is no more clear that the public would believe with whatever institutions we tell them, because they have access to data. For example, if somebody tells you, you should wear your mask, you can look at the data, do some analysis, figure out whether, you want to follow or you don't want to follow. And I think there is this computational trust that is coming to our society. And what it means is the access to the data, together with the computations, analysis of the data that you do, gives you different perspectives on how you want to trust. And our vision is to think maybe more deeply about this concept of computational trust, relying on data and computations to decide what is ethical, what is trustworthy, what is right, so on and so forth. And to answer that, the way we are breaking up the problem a bit is this trustworthy computing. You can layer the trust at 3 layers. One of them is computations. This is cutting down all the way to electrical engineering, chip design. These are the things that NVIDIA, Intel are doing, how to build chips that you are sure they're doing what they're doing. There is no hacking into them. There is no bug that can manipulate them, so on and so forth. Another layer on top of it would be trustworthy learning. So it means once you do your computations, you want to do machine learning, you want to do AI in trustworthy manner. All the topics that we discussed so far, USC Amazon Center, are related to this aspect of the problem. Then a third layer building on top of it is trustworthy social networks, trustworthy knowledge dissemination. Means at the end of the day, once you learn something, you want to give it to a broader audience. That's what journalism do. That's what social networks would do. People are getting their news from different sources nowadays, like Reddit. People use it for deciding what stocks to buy, so on and so forth, right? So you can imagine these venues are going to be perhaps future venues for knowledge dissemination. And the question is, how can you make them trustworthy? So I think if we can think about these 3 layers of computing, learning, and knowledge dissemination, how to make them trustworthy, then that can be a good direction towards computational trust in our future society. So that's our vision for going beyond this center.
All right, Emilio, how about you? Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on computational trust, especially with some of the work that you guys are doing with, between Viterbi and Annenberg?
Absolutely. So I'm going to start actually with a personal anecdote that fueled a lot of the efforts in my career, and also I had the privilege to work on these problems with many people at Viterbi and outside. Obviously, I've been a bit of a nerd since I was a child, but around maybe 12 or 13, I had the luck to read this paper from this book about the life of Alan Turing. And there are a lot of great questions in chat about what is AI and so on. You don't look no farther, just read all the seminal work by Turing. He posed all the definitions and defined all these problems already back in the 50s. So I became really interested in this problem of the, the imitation game. Today we call it the Turing test, understanding, when a human is interacting with a machine, an artificial intelligence of sort, versus when the interlocutor is another human fellow. And I thought, that's it. I really want to, this is what I want to do when I'm a grown-up. I want to understand this problem. I want to, because I think this speaks to the true nature of what is the grand vision of artificial intelligence, right? When machines will be on par with us on any task, not only on excelling in automation or excelling in some particular learning task, but really mimicking the learning capacity and ability of the human mind. I realized very quickly that long before we will have robots, powered by artificial general intelligence or a human-like brain walking in our streets or engaging with us in the physical world in an embodied form, we actually deal with these robots in a way or shape or form online all the time. Right? We have chatbots that are deployed by all sorts of Fortune 500 companies as customer service kind of entities, and those are kind of reasonable. They're getting better and better by the day. But they were less interesting to me because they are defined or designed and implemented with a specific purpose in mind, which is supporting a customer. Whereas I was much more interested in the possibility that some kind of simple or more complex artificial intelligence might be deployed in the wild, online, for malicious purposes. So it might be abused in some form, maybe to steer the discussion online in certain directions, or maybe to convince or persuade or influence folks about certain ideas or certain products or certain beliefs and so on. So over the last 10 years or so, I became very interested in studying these kind of interactions between human and machines in the cyberspace, whereas the cyberspace is designed as these online platforms that we study. And over the decade or so that I have been engaged in this research problem, I have found evidence of applications by bad actors, by malicious entities, organizations, and so on, foreign, state-sponsored entities, etc., of artificial intelligence of different levels at different levels of complexity for malicious reasons, for nefarious applications, spanning from the manipulation of the stock market, to get back to Salman's example, to the running of the Russian influence campaign that occurred during 2016 before the November 8th election, as well as recruiting Westerner into ISIS through online channels and so on. And the reason why these phenomena, these abuse exist, are basically twofold. The first thing is that you can scale up the efforts using AI and automation to run these activities, these nefarious activities, much beyond what a human could do within their own cognitive and time limits and capacity limits, right? We can only, as humans, we have to go to sleep. We can't, operate 24/7 at the speed of light or close to that. But as machines become more and more sophisticated, they can mimic our behavior. They can clone our behavior. They can learn how we talk and generate human-like language, just like all these large language models do these days, and so on. And then they can use that to affect our own behavior, the human's behavior, right? And maybe the most interesting example that I can give you of this application of studies of computational trust was a set of findings that we published in 2016 that became very popular, very well known. We had a few publications before the election, before the November 8, 2016 election, where we alerted the world that basically we have observed a large presence of influence campaigns that distorted the political discussion around the election. And they were run through automation, through bots, social bot accounts. That's what we think of, these entities that operate in an automated fashion and that interact with the humans on platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and so on. And actually, we reported these results not only to the academic community, publishing them again before the election, so without the benefit of hindsight, but also we discussed the findings with the U.S. government officials. We had support from, for example, California Department of State and other folks who were engaged in this particular understanding of what went on. And there are a number of documents, of course, that have been released during the 2017-2018 Senate investigation committee into the Russian interference operation that reference our discoveries as one of the catalysts that further enabled the analysis and the study and the understanding of the implications of the utilization, the use of these automation means and artificial intelligence to steer online discussion. And thanks to that, in part, today we have laws and regulations active and operational, for example, in the state of California, that prevent the use and fine or make the use of bots and artificial intelligence techniques for the promotion of political speech and so on, make it as a sanctioned, as a sanctionable activity. So all these fall under the umbrella of what you could think of as a computational trust and for the study of the impact of AI on society.
Yeah, and Emilio, I was very impressed because you shared with me that actually you guys' team found 50,000 fraudulent accounts that were disseminating false information about the elections and so forth, right? So that's pretty amazing that that came from USC. So I want to make sure we leave enough time for Q&A. So I'm going to ask one last question and then go to some of the questions that we're getting. So we've obviously got a lot of alumni here, many of them from technology companies like Google, NVIDIA, Apple, and so forth. How can they get engaged? Do you have any recommendations on, again, as part of what we're doing here in the Bay Area, Viterbi, and as well as the projects that you guys are doing? What are some suggestions you may have?
Sure. There are different levels. I think that I was actually following the great questions on Q&A and typing some answers there to make sure, to encourage people to ask more questions. We are not ignoring those great questions. But I think there are different levels, means that at one level, if somebody is interested to know what are the research things that are happening, as I mentioned, we are going to have annual symposium. There is a website for the center that I think in your email you have sent to everybody. The information will be posted there, and those symposium and workshop will be available to public. So researchers in different sectors that they want to know and possibly make connections with professors in the area at USC, they're welcome to join, make connections. At another level, we are very interested to make connections to enable more research. For example, if among the alumni there are at key positions that they are looking into partnering with universities, like similar to what Amazon has done, to have an impact on trustworthy AI or more broadly computational trust in our society. As we mentioned, we are having, we are thinking a bigger umbrella of trustworthy computing, trustworthy learning, and trustworthy knowledge dissemination or journalism. So if anybody wants to engage, for example, NVIDIA wants to support us to have trustworthy computing, we have already, mechanisms, we have already, ecosystem in place, and we would be glad to initiate those discussions and do something big together. So that's, a possibility for broader engagement.
Sounds good. Working on it, Salman. And also, I think, some other ideas I got with another prestigious university here in the Bay Area wanting to talk to me. And an idea is sponsoring a group of students with scholarships that could work on a particular project that is of interest to your company, right? So, federated learning, for example, helps a lot in healthcare. And so, any something like that, just come to us and we'll connect you with the right people at Viterbi to provide that. And obviously the other one is, hire interns. I've helped quite a few interns that didn't get through the formal channel to get positions at NVIDIA. And we treat interns like amazing, right? And in fact, before before the pandemic, they used to go to our CEO's house. It's like, wait a second, all these kids are going to his CEO house. I've never been invited to CEO house for a party. But most of them end up getting full-time offers. I mean, internships really translate into that. So hopefully, I want to encourage all of you to be mentors to our students, because I remember myself graduating as a 20-year-old and just having no idea how to get a job, especially since I was a foreign student at the time. All right, with that, I'd like to move on to some of the questions. And let me see where to start. So we had actually a question from someone that basically said, if we're not like, if I don't have a computer science degree, is there a program more like an executive program that gives you the ability to learn about AI at USC? So any suggestions there? I don't know if there is something from that perspective.
Yeah, I can probably take that, since I am the co-director of the Applied Data Science Master Programs, as well as the undergraduate and graduate undergraduate major and minor degrees in data science. So that is a fantastic question. And I think that we don't serve our stakeholders as well as we could and should when it comes to promoting the enormous variety of programs that we have in this space. You have to do, as a potential student, a lot of research to get to enough information to understand how many programs there are. But just to give you sort of in a nutshell, an overview, we have dedicated master programs that are aimed at serving students who don't necessarily have a computer science or even a computing background at large, meaning engineering of some sort. The Applied Data Science program, master program, is one such example. Is the second largest master program in the Viterbi School after the computer science master program, and it admits every year in the order of several hundred students, more than 400 now, and a large fraction, nearly 40% of the students that we admit do not have a computer science undergraduate degree. In fact, some of them don't even have STEM degrees. Some people come from medicine and biology and economics and so on. Obviously, you need to have a quantitative mindset, but we have some exceptional students who have come from the humanities and social sciences as well, who steer towards understanding the social implications, political implications, ethical implications, and so on of artificial intelligence, and they can bring that blend of background that leverages other non-computing, non-engineering mindsets and bring that into a more data science, AI, and computer science studies. So we have a variety of these programs. I encourage everyone who might be interested in looking into master programs, certificates, PDP, which are progressive degree programs for working professionals that are already, busy with their full-time jobs and want to take, a next step in their educational career. There are plenty of opportunities for everyone, and we also have DEN, which stands for Distance Education Network, which is systematically rated over the last 20, 30 years as the #1 distance education program, remote education program in the country. We have DEN degrees for students who are not physically in the Southern California area and who cannot afford to attend in-person classes whenever campus will reopen, hopefully in the fall. So there is an enormous offering at USC that I encourage everyone to check out, besides and beyond the fantastic degrees in computer science and electrical engineering and so on that are obviously well known and well promoted and well advertised to everyone.
All right, but thank you. That's great. Got a lot of question here from Fred Cohen. He says, does this mean we are no longer calling automated mechanisms that perform tasks better than people as AI, like expert system, production system, and so forth? I certainly would say, robotics is a perfect example of AI automating things and doing certain tasks better than humans. And we're actually implementing a lot of that in logistics, distribution centers for, loading and unloading, for picking and packing orders and so forth. So I would certainly say automation is definitely part of AI, but love to have maybe Salman give your perspective on that. I think you went on mute.
Yes, no, I think your answer is what I would have said also. I don't have more to add.
All right. Okay. Let's see. Next one. Deep learning can often work well in practice, even though we don't know what the models are actually looking for when making their prediction. Do you think that interpretable machine learning will have a significant role to play in increasing our trust in AI and machine learning?
Of course, I think that's everybody would agree that's one of the angles for bringing trust, instead of viewing it as a black box, trying to understand what does the algorithm do, what is it learning, why does it work. I think these are important steps. If you cannot explain why it is working, then you cannot also explain why it is not working, that's where it's causing the trust. But that's a well hot area of research to shed light into why is it that these deep models are achieving so much good performance.
Great. So the next question is, to maintain public trust, should any AI operating in public, like cars, use public training and testing data sets?
I was writing up the answer to that, so I can simply summarize it here. So great question, Daniel. I think that there are a lot of people in the AI community who would agree, and I am one of those who advocate for this direction as well, that using publicly available training, test data and so on would be an enormous step forward for standardization and so on. In fact, personally, I would go as far as saying that we would need to have standardization bodies for applications such as the ones that you just described with self-driving vehicles, as well as some kind of benchmarks that include not only an evaluation of data, publicly accessible data used for training and testing, but other tools for auditing black boxes and make them less black boxes. And understanding, making these models interpretable to understand why they work and how, when they fail and why, right? If there is to bring accountability and transparency to the picture, you cannot simply say that manufacturer X self-driving car caused an accident because the deep neural network that drives the car didn't work, right? That's not sufficient. So there are rules and regulations and expectations that should apply both for human drivers as well as self-driving machines and self-driving cars and vehicles and so on.
All right. Well, I've been so fascinated. I just realized I've got 1 minute left to wrap this up. So I would say it's been a really, really engaging and wonderful panel. So I want to thank both of you. Emilio is any minute expecting a baby to come, or his wife is right there packed up and ready to go. And in fact, yesterday said, I don't know if I can make it. We got to go to the hospital. So I want to thank both of you. It's been just a wonderful panel. Thank you to our audience. We'll try to capture all the questions and certainly get back to you with answers to any of those. So with that, Meta, if you don't mind, if you can share the next steps. One of the key things we wanted to say is we are looking for ideas from all of you, like what are some topics that seem to be of interest. We've been doing a lot of AI because I'm one of the 5 founding members of the Viterbi Innovation Partners, and that's my area of interest, and that's where I often jump in. But we've had really interesting topics around the venture community and what do they invest in, and several other really interesting. We had a younger group of panelists that were talking about career paths from Viterbi. So please, we'd like to encourage you to contact Meta Schuster. You see her email there. And then also we have Viterbi Innovation Partners has a LinkedIn page. So if you're not following that, please do. We'd love, that's where we post a lot of our future events and get ideas and feedback from you guys. So please do that. And also, of course, Viterbi has a site called Online Event Series, where you can see other events that Viterbi is hosting beyond what we're doing in the Bay Area. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and really, really informative and interactive panel today. And Salman and Emilio, thank you again. It was really a pleasure being your moderator and your host. And I wish I was back in school working with you guys.
Thanks
You,
for having
everyone.
us. And thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you.
Everybody. Right on.
Goodbye.